Both quarantines are over, 0 cases, and the headline still says questions remain. Yeah, no kidding. If you're just joining us, the MV Hondius cluster is an Andes strain Hantavirus outbreak tied to a cruise ship. Unusual because Andes can actually spread person to person. Health agencies have been tracing passengers and crew across countries, and by the last checkpoint, the CDC said every potentially exposed U.S. citizen had finished 42 days of monitoring with no hantavirus disease reported in the States.
This is Hantavirus Watch. Today, RIVM closes the loop in the Netherlands. Contact tracing still crosses borders. Argentina pushes back on its own tourist hub. And one paper explains why we were watching this so closely in the first place. This one's from RIVM.
Before they were allowed out of quarantine, every person was retested for the Andes virus. All tests were negative. That means they do not have the Andes virus. The passengers and crew of the MV Hondius went into quarantine following an outbreak of the Andes virus on the ship. A total of 13 people became ill and 3 people died.
RIVM's June 18 notice puts a date on the European close. Almost all of the MV Hondius passengers and crew left quarantine that day. They were retested, all negative. 13 people fell ill, 3 died, and the 42-day window ran out with no new cases.
So that's the second clock to run out clean. RIVM on the 18th, CDC on the 21st. Both ended at 0 new cases. The isolation held. But hang on, did those 2 windows actually run in sync? Quarantine started May 6, ran 42 days. Same ship, same exposure. Were the Americans and the Europeans on the same clock? Or did different countries start counting on different days?
The 42 days isn't arbitrary, Brian. That's the maximum known incubation period for Andes, according to RIVM. No symptoms inside that window, and you're considered clear. And there's still 1 person held over, a close contact of someone hospitalized later. So I wouldn't call it a clean sweep. It's almost all. Here's Matt Bodner at NBC News.
The cruise ship at the center of the hantavirus outbreak is heading toward the Canary Islands in Spain. Contact tracing is underway in multiple countries, including the United States, after passengers left the ship before the first reported case.
Okay, here's what gets me about this NBC piece. Passengers got off the ship before the first case was even reported. Now, contact tracing is running in multiple countries, including the United States, and our U.S. window closed June 21 with 0 cases. The Dutch closed theirs June 18, per the RIVM update we just hit. 2 clocks, same ship, and they basically ran in sync. That part actually held.
Right. This is Andes hantavirus, and the U.S. monitoring period was tied to that 42-day incubation window. Both surveillance arms ran the clock and closed clean. We can say that with confidence.
So why is cross-border tracing still the headline? The geography keeps resurfacing. Spain-bound ship, U.S. contacts, who knows where else, and the same where and when questions just won't settle.
Because tracing follows people who scattered before anyone knew to look. The ship's heading to the Canary Islands. The contacts are everywhere else. Closing the surveillance window doesn't end the trace. It tells you how long people had to be watched. Here's Reuters.
Argentina's southernmost province of Tierra del Fuego has reassured tourists it is safe to visit, ruling out the region as the source of a deadly hantavirus outbreak that struck a luxury cruise ship that had docked there. Local health authorities confirmed that Tierra del Fuego has recorded 0 hantavirus cases.
So here's what's nagging me. This Reuters clip is from May 11. Tierra del Fuego's epidemiology director, Juan Petrina, says the cruise patients couldn't have been infected there based on the timeline. Fine. But if a provincial official had already closed the land question back in May, why was the NBC contact tracing story we just hit still chasing leads across multiple countries 2 weeks later?
Because those are 2 different jobs, Brian. Petrina cleared one geography, the province, off a symptom onset timeline. The cross-border tracing is about the contacts who left the ship, not where the virus first came from. And that clearance is provincial. It didn't come from WHO or ECDC. 0 recorded cases in Tierra del Fuego is a real number. But this is also a jurisdiction reassuring its own tourism sector, with a tourism secretary talking about business.
Right. Pavlov from the Tourism Institute calling it crucial for business. That's the part that makes me want a second signature on the site assessment, not just Petrina's.
American Society for Microbiology with Madeline Barron.
The cause of his death, while initially unclear, was determined to be Andes hantavirus, ANDV, which he picked up prior to boarding the ship. His wife, sickened by the same virus, later died as well.
Okay, both clocks ran out. RIVM called the European quarantine done June 18, and CDC closed the U.S. window June 21st. 0 new cases on either side of the Atlantic. So now I can finally read this ASM piece for what it is, a retrospective. The thing that scared me about Andes was right there in the headline. It's the one hantavirus that goes person to person.
That's the distinction to hold on to. Most hantaviruses need rodent contact, droppings, urine. Andes is the outlier that can transmit human to human, which is exactly why the 42-day monitoring window was so strict. And the window held. 10 cases, 3 deaths, all traceable to the ship. No secondary spread once people scattered home. The biology Barron describes lines up with the surveillance result.
Which is great for the contacts, but it doesn't close the Argentina question. The index case got infected before he ever boarded in Ushuaia. So where exactly?
Have a question, story idea, or correction for Hantavirus Watch? Send us a note at hantaviruswatch@lanternpodcasts.com. We read your feedback, and it helps keep the briefing useful. You'll find links to every story we covered today in the show notes. If one caught your ear, you can follow it there and read a little deeper. That's Hantavirus Watch for today. This is a Lantern podcast.